We are the Switchblade Sister Social Club, true crime podcast where two sisters exploit their worst fears for your entertainment. I'm Dee, the elder, and my little sister here.
I'm Randa.
Hi, everyone. Welcome back. We are so happy to have listeners. So if you're listening, thank you. We love you.
And appreciate you.
Oh my God, so much. So what's the chit chat?
Oh, I do have chit chat. Do you know what? I have just taken on a new client who's an absolute fucking dream. Like, I am completely still in shock. But basically, the most well-known person, maybe even globally, in the autistic world is now one of my clients. His name is Jude Morrow. He's amazing. He's a TED Talk speaker, motivational speaker. He speaks to schools and businesses about neurodiversity, and I'm managing his social media channels and also his app, which I wanted to mention because we have had some really, obviously we talk about autism a lot. My kids are autistic. Deanna is dyslexic, dyspraxic, neurodivergence is prevalent in the family, and we talk about it a lot. And I'm also managing an app for this client called the Endeesphere. So that's spelled Endeesphere. Endeesphere app. Will link it in the show
spell it
notes.
again.
Endee sphere.
Got it. I'm downloading it now.
We'll put it in the show notes. You get 7 days free, and then you can either pay monthly or it's $79 for the year. But it is amazing. It's not just a community, a support community, but there are webinars, there are workshops, there are classes, absolutely everything. So it's for people who are neurodivergent or for parents of kids who are neurodivergent. And it is just literally...
Oh, and you know what? I want to say, I'm just looking at it now. I would say it's also super useful for partners of people with neurodiversity.
Yes, yeah. So if you've got people in your family, partners, kids, or you are neurodivergent yourself, it is just a supportive community, but it's a place you can ask questions, but it's also, there's workshops by specialists, classes, webinars about absolutely everything. So it is an absolute bargain. It's an absolute bargain for what you get, because also as everyone who lives in this world knows, accessing support services like speech therapy, occupational therapy, therapy in general, are really hard to either expensive or the waiting lists have never been longer for diagnoses. And also
even to get on those waiting lists normally involves a lot of harassing your GP to take you seriously.
The waiting list can be up to 5 years. So Jude Morrow is the owner of the app and the director of Neurodiversity Training International, who also offers, and I've had this question a lot, like almost weekly, I have people asking me about, we think our child is autistic, or we think we're autistic or have ADHD, what do we do? So this organization, Neurodiversity Training International, does diagnoses for ADHD and autism separately or combined at a much more affordable price than privately, and they also do payment plans. So it really is...
What legends.
Yeah. I mean, this guy is, a godlike figure in the
he can be our new, maybe we should make some fan merch for him.
Yeah, love him.
And also, can I just say, I'm so proud of you.
Thank you. I'm still really in shock. It's like a dream to work with him. So check him out on Instagram, judemorrow.com, or on Facebook, or on TikTok, judemorrow7, and download the app. If it's relevant to you, you get 7 days free. And you get to talk to me.
All those links in the show notes.
Yeah.
So amazing. Oh,
it is. Yeah.
There's some amazing people in the world, aren't there?
Yeah.
A lot of shits, and we covered them on our podcast, but that's why it's nice to also talk about some of the amazing people that we have.
So that's my chit chat. I really, I'm really happy about that. So yeah.
Well, my chit chat is that I've got my friend Vicky coming up from Exeter later today, and she's staying the weekend, and I'm just really excited because...
What are you going to do?
We're going to Handfest. So for those of you who don't know, there's an amazing band called Random Hand, and they have, it's their 20th anniversary, which is kind of creepy for me because I remember when they first started, going to their gigs when they first started. So yeah, so they've been organizing this year a series of different fun events. Like we went to Handfest in Leeds in January, which is a 2-day punk festival, and they're doing Handfest in Tufnell Park at the Dome, a 1-day punk festival with bands like Lightyear.
The Dome.
Yeah, I know.
That's a blast from the past. Jesus. Okay.
Darko will be there, JB Conspiracy, a bunch of other bands. It's just going to be really fun. So Vicky's coming up for that and to hang out with me for the weekend. And we're going to go for an all-day punk festival.
Nice. Take photos and we'll post it on socials.
I will post it. I will post it. I won't post it. I'll send it to you and you will post it. Yeah. So that's my chit chat. I'm just really excited.
So I'm going to tell you the fucking story.
Just get into it. Oh my God. Wait. I need to prepare. So few surprises in the world that you've got to enjoy the ones you have. Although it will be fucking awful. Go. Wait, do I know about this case?
Yes. I think everyone in the UK knows about this case.
Oh God.
I'm going to talk about the finer details because although I knew about this case, I didn't fucking know the depths of depravity of this case.
Okay, oh God.
So I'm just going to go into it. Okay, so today I'm going to talk about Harole Shipman.
Oh no!
Yeah. And you know, I know we said last episode I presented that I wasn't going to cover anything to do with elderly people. If it's any
What's happened to you?
It sparked an interest. And I think it has to be fucking talked about. I don't know. I just felt compelled to talk about it.
It's a big one. It's
so I still can't do babies or kids. I cannot talk about anything to do with babies or kids.
Until season 3, apparently.
No, I can't. But if it's any consolation, they didn't die in pain.
It kind of is, but it's also not.
You know, it's something. It's
something to hold on to. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. So Harole Shipman was a GP in the UK. So that's, you know, for our US listeners, like a doctor. You know, not a surgeon.
General practitioner, exactly. Yeah. The one that the first port of call, you're registered with a GP, a general practitioner. That's where you go to when you have anything, and then if they can't deal with it, they refer you on to a specialist. And and we get it free on the NHS because we are not a fucking shit healthcare country. Oh no, we are. It is getting worse. But anyways, I don't know where I'm going with this. Cut this out.
A doctor, so he's a doctor who took an oath to preserve life, yet went on to become Britain's most prolific serial killer. Britain's most prolific, and we fucking talked about a lot. So
I think he's the world's most prolific.
No, are you going to keep fucking interrupting me? Can I tell the fucking story?
Tell the story.
Okay, thank you. His case. I let that stop. So his case remains one of the darkest episodes in criminal history, with a long trail of unsuspecting victims, most of them elderly women. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about him. So Harold Frederick Shipman Jr. was born in 1946, died 2004. He was an English GP. He's considered to be, as I said, one of the most prolific serial killers in modern history, with an estimated 250 victims. Now, on 31st of January 2000, he was found guilty of murdering 15 patients under his care. He was sentenced. You can like talk sometimes.
I'm scared to
interject if you need.
I'm scared to be honest.
He was sentenced to life imprisonment with a whole life order, which we just talked about last episode. Mm-hmm. He died by suicide by hanging himself in his cell at HM Prison Wakefield in West Yorkshire on the 13th of January 2004, and he was only 57 years old.
What? He was only 57.
I know, he looked so much older. I know, he looked so much older. Yeah, I know. That's why I say only because he fucking looked ancient. Anyway,
I would have thought late 60s, and also that death was too good for him.
Yeah, it was. Yeah. So the Shipman inquiry was a 2-year-long investigation into all the deaths certified by him, Shipman, chaired by Dame Janet Smith, and they examined Shipman's crimes. So it revealed that Shipman targeted vulnerable elderly people who trusted him as their doctor. He killed his victims either by a fatal dose of drugs or by prescribing them a large dose. He was nicknamed Dr. Death and the Angel of Death, and is the only British doctor to date to have been convicted of murdering his patients, although other doctors have been acquitted of similar crimes or convicted of lesser crimes. So I find that fucking scary because, you know, you always think, who can you trust? Teachers, I know, having been one, that can't say the same for all teachers. Don't always, yeah. Anyway, cut that out if you need to. I don't want to scare people.
But yeah,
doctors,
there's people in
fucking...
positions of authority,
Yes.
and you think that you can trust them at least to be
Yes.
operating by a specific code of conduct.
Yes. And that's why I find this terrifying, because you think doctors of all people, maybe not always the police, but doctors you think you can really fucking trust, you know? Anyway, so a bit of background. Shipman was born in 1946 on the Bestwood Estate, which was a council estate in Nottingham, and he was the second of 3 children from a working class family, and his parents were devout Methodists. So I mention that because sometimes religion creeps into these fucking stories. So Shipman passed his 11 plus exam in 1957, which gained him entry into High Pavement Grammar School, Nottingham, which he left in 1964. So 11 plus exams get you into, they're like selective exams. They get you into selective schools like grammar schools. So he was smart. He was particularly close to his mother, and he was her favorite child. He died, and his mother died of lung cancer when he was only 17. I think if he didn't already have something in him, this moment may have been the catalyst, because her death...
mean, that's tough.
Yeah. But listen to this. Her death came in a manner similar to what later became Shipman's own modus operandi. This is what I find fucking fascinating, because, you know, I always want to know the backstory. And I feel like this moment I'm about to tell you is the backstory. So in the later stages of her disease, she had morphine administered at home by a doctor. Shipman witnessed his mother's pain subside despite her terminal condition until her death on the 21st of June, 1963. And he was actually present when the doctor gave his mother her final dose, and she passed away. So Shipman then, after, I will talk about that more. Shipman then studied medicine at Leeds School of Medicine, University of Leeds, and graduated in 1970. So this is after his mother's death. So his mother instilled in him a complex of superiority that tainted most of his relationships in life, leaving him isolated with very few friends. When his mother was diagnosed with terminal lung cancer, he willingly oversaw her care as she declined. He was fascinated by the positive effect that the administration of morphine had on her suffering, until she succumbed to the disease in 1963. So he was devastated by her death, and that's why he was determined to go to medical school. And he was admitted to, medical school in Leeds for training. Sorry, hold on. Blah, 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 blah. Okay, yeah, so he went to Leeds Medical School. So still a loner, he met his future wife, Primrose, at the age of 19. And they were married when she was 17 and he was 19. And they got married because she was 5 months pregnant with their first child. So in 1966, Shipman married Primrose May Oxtoby, that was her name, and they had 4 children. Now, interestingly, I find this interesting. In contrast to Shipman's superior braininess, because he was known to have a high IQ at least, Primrose was illiterate and left school early with no qualifications. And I think that kind of ties into his complex of complex of superiority to somebody he could potentially easily control and dominate, and have be dependent on him. So Shipman received a scholarship to medical school. He graduated. Forget that. He started work after he graduated from Leeds Medical School. He started work at Pontefract General Infirmary in Yorkshire in 1974 and took his first position as a GP. In 1975, so he's only just fucking qualified, he was caught forging prescriptions of pethidine for his own use. So this is a story where, like the last one, like others, the signs were there. The evidence was there.
Opportunities. Yeah.
He was fined only £600. Okay, maybe that was a lot more back then. But he briefly attended a drug rehabilitation clinic in York. That was his punishment. After a brief period as medical officer for Hatfield College in Durham, he became a GP at the Donnybrook Medical Centre in Hyde, Greater Manchester in 1977. And he continued working as a GP in Hyde throughout the 80s He then founded his own surgery on Market Street in 1993 and became a respected member of the community. Again, fucking links with other stories. Remember Delroy Grant, alleged, respected member of the community.
Ever since we started developing this like interest in true crime, so forever, every time I hear solid member of the community, pillar of the community, I think serial killer.
Yeah.
I just think no one.
Yeah. So there are so many themes in all of our episodes that are just like a thread that runs through. This is one of them. The complex of superiority, control, pillar of the community. Okay, so in March 1998, Dr. Linda Reynolds of the Brooks Surgery in Hyde, prompted by Deborah Massey from Frank Massey and Sons Funeral Parlor, expressed concerns to John Pollard, the coroner for the South Manchester district, about the high death rate among Shipman's patients. In particular, she was concerned about the large number of cremation forms for elderly women that he had countersigned. She suspected Shipman was either through negligence or intent killing his patients. The matter was brought to the attention of the police, who were unable to find sufficient evidence to bring charges. The Shipman inquiry later blamed the police for assigning inexperienced officers to the case, and between 17th of April 1998, when the police abandoned the investigation and Shipman's eventual arrest, he killed 3 more people. So his last victim was Kathleen Grundy, a former ceremonial mayor of Hyde, who was found dead at her home in 1998. Shipman was the last person to see her alive and later signed her death certificate, recording old age as cause of death. Grundy's daughter, who was a lawyer, Angela Woodruff, became concerned when solicitor Brian Burgess informed her that a will had been made, apparently by her mother, although there were doubts about its authenticity. The will excluded her and her children, but left $386,000 to Shipman. I mean, why? That would raise questions.
I know, it's like they're so smart and yet so stupid.
Yeah. So there's a theory about that, which I'll tell you. Yeah. I'll go into, but yeah. So Burgess told Woodruff to report it. Woodruff was his last victim's daughter, and went to the police, who began an investigation. So Grundy, his last victim's body, was exhumed and when examined found to contain traces of diamorphine, which is medical heroin, used for pain control in terminal cancer patients. Shipman was arrested on 7th of September 1998 and was found to own a typewriter of the type used to make the forged will. The police then investigated other deaths that Shipman had certified and created a list of 15 specimen cases to investigate. They discovered a pattern of his administering lethal overdoses of diamorphine, signing patients' death certificates, and then forging medical records indicating they had been in poor health. So Prescription for Murder, which is a book by journalists Brian Whittle and Jean Ritchie, reports 2 theories on why Shipman forged the will. One is that he wanted to be caught because his life was out of control. The other reason, that he planned to retire at 55 and leave the country. I believe that one.
Yeah, and is it either Colin Sutton or Steve Gaskin who are like, I think it's Steve Gaskin who says, don't believe when they talk about, they want to be caught. They never want to be caught.
Mm-hmm.
And also wasn't he addicted to drugs still?
Yeah, I'm going to go into it.
Okay.
So Shipman's trial began at Preston Crown Court in 1999. He was charged with the murders of 15 women by lethal injections of diamorphine, all between 1995 and 98. So I'm going to read out those names. Marie West, Irene Turner, Lizzie Adams, Jean Lilly, Ivy Lomas, Muriel Grimshaw, Marie Quinn, Kathleen Wagstaff, Bianca Pomfret, Nora Nuttall, Pamela Hillier, Maureen Ward, Winifred Meller, Joan Melia, and Kathleen Grundy. So I'm reading those out because it's, to pay respect. Yeah, to pay respect to his victims. But also reading it out, it's shocking when you hear that many names, and that's not all of them. So Shipman's legal representatives tried unsuccessfully to have Grundy's case tried separately from the others, as a motive was shown by the alleged forgery of Grundy's will. So on 31st of January 2000, after 6 days of deliberation, the jury found Shipman guilty of 15 counts of murder and 1 count of forgery. So Mr. Justice Forbes subsequently sentenced Shipman to life imprisonment on all 15 counts of murder, with a recommendation that he be subject to a whole life tariff to be served concurrently with a sentence of 4 years for forging Grundy's will. Then on the 11th of February, 11 days after his conviction, Shipman was struck off the medical register by the General Medical Council. 2 years later, Home Secretary David Blunkett confirmed the judge's whole life tariff just months before British government ministers lost their power to set minimum terms for prisoners. And while authorities could have brought many additional charges, they concluded that a fair hearing would be impossible in view of the enormous publicity surrounding the original trial. Furthermore, the 15 life sentences already imposed rendered further litigation unnecessary. So not so fun fact, Shipman became friends with fellow serial killer Peter Moore while he was in prison. Just to give you a little extra detail.
This has come up a few times, like with Levi Belfield as well, and so forth, where they're like, they only take the cases to trial that they either have like a huge amount of evidence on so that they'll definitely get a conviction, or they get to a point where like, oh, well, he's going to have life in prison anyways. There's no point spending the time, effort, resources, money, etc., and the anguish for everyone involved. But then it's also really sad for the families of those potential victims to not have confirmation. I mean, they probably know. They probably know in their hearts. And
but I wondered the same, whether they needed that confirmation for closure.
Yeah, and maybe they don't need a bit of paperwork that says it or whatever, or maybe they do. We don't know, but it's just a horrendous situation, isn't it?
Yeah. So Shipman denied his guilt, disputing the scientific evidence against him. He never made any public statements about his actions, and Shipman's wife Primrose maintained that he was not guilty even after his conviction. So Shipman is the only doctor in the history of British medicine found guilty of murdering his patients. Although John Bodkin Adams was charged in 1957 with murdering a single patient, amid rumors he had killed dozens more over a 10-year period, and possibly provided the role model for Shipman. However, he was acquitted and no further charges were pursued. Then historian Pamela Cullen has argued that because of Adams' acquittal, there was no impetus to examine asserted flaws in the British legal system until the Shipman case. So, the trial. Police later established that Shipman would, in most cases, alter these medical notes directly after killing the patient to ensure that his account matched the historical records.
So he would basically kill someone and then go back and be like, and add records from like 2 months ago, 3 months ago, a year ago, saying that this person was suffering from old age, whatever.
And remember, he owned his own surgery at this point.
Yeah.
So I'm guessing that made it easier for things to go undetected. He did not have a superior overseeing what he was doing. So what Shipman had failed to grasp was that each alteration of the records would be time-stamped by the computer, enabling police to ascertain exactly which records had been altered. Not that smart. Following extensive investigations, which included numerous how do you say this word? Exhumations?
Yeah.
Exhumations, okay, and autopsies. The police charged Shipman with 15 individual counts of murder on 7th of September 1998, as well as 1 count of forgery. And his trial started in Preston Crown Court in 1999. So attempts by his defense counsel to have Shipman tried in 3 separate phases, i.e. cases with physical evidence, cases without, and the Grundy case, where the forgery differentiated it from other cases. And I wonder why the last case he decided to do that with his last victim, as well as to have damning evidence relating to Shipman's fraudulent accumulation of morphine and other drugs were thrown out. And the trial proceeded on the 16 charges included in the indictment. So the prosecution asserted that Shipman had killed 15 patients because he enjoyed exercising control over life and death, and dismissed any claims that he had been acting compassionately, as none of his victims were suffering a terminal illness. So these were people, although elderly, were in good health. Woodruff appeared as the first witness. So that's the daughter of the last victim, whose will he forged. Her forthright manner and account of her determination to get the truth impressed the jury, and attempts by Shipman's defense to undermine her were largely unsuccessful. The government pathologist led the court through the gruesome postmortem findings where morphine toxicity was the cause of death in most instances. Thereafter, fingerprint analysis of the forged will showed that Grundy had never handled the will, and her signature was dismissed by a handwriting expert as a crude forgery. So a police computer analyst then testified how Shipman had altered his computer records to create symptoms that his dead patients never had, in most cases within hours of their deaths. So as the trial progressed onto other victims and the accounts of their relatives, the pattern of Shipman's behavior became more clear. So a lack of compassion, disregard for the wishes of attending relatives, and reluctance to attempt to revive patients were bad enough. But another fraud also came to light. He would pretend to call the emergency services in the presence of relatives, then cancel the call when the patient was discovered then cancel the call out when the patient was discovered to be dead. So telephone records showed that no actual calls were made. So he'd pretend to call an ambulance, and then when
pretend to cancel it when they were dead, but really he'd never called them in the first place.
Yeah. So finally, evidence of his drug hoarding was introduced, with false prescribing to patients who didn't require morphine, over-prescribing to others who did, as well as proof of his visits to the homes of the recently deceased to collect unused drug supplies for his disposal. So Shipman's arrogance throughout the trial did nothing to assist his defense in painting a picture of a dedicated healthcare professional. Despite their attempts, his arrogance and constantly changing stories, when caught out in his lies, did nothing to endear him to the jury. Following a meticulous summation by the judge and a caution to the jury that no one had actually witnessed Shipman kill any of his patients, the jury were sufficiently convinced by the testimony and evidence presented and unanimously found Shipman guilty on all charges. So that was 15 counts of murder and 1 of forgery, and this was on January 31st, 2000. The judge passed 15 life sentences as well as a 4-year sentence for forgery, which he commuted to a whole life sentence, effectively removing any possibility of parole. And Shipman was incarcerated at Durham Prison. And the fact that a doctor had killed 15 patients sent a shudder through the medical community, but this was to prove insignificant in light of further investigations that delved more deeply into his patient case list history. So a clinical audit conducted by Professor Richard Baker of the University of Leicester examined the number and pattern of deaths in Shipman's practice and compared them to those with other practitioners. It found that the rates of death amongst his elderly patients were significantly higher, clustered at certain times of day, and that Shipman was in attendance in a disproportionately high number of cases. The audit goes on to estimate that he may have been responsible for the deaths of at least 236 patients over a 24-year period. So it wasn't just the 15. That's why I say prolific serial killer.
When you see, Steve Gaskin once in one of his talks flashed up a chart of all the murders in the UK over the years, and the Harole Shipman years just spike up like a ridiculous amount, because this man, I think last year we had 760 murders. So if you think he's contributing an additional 200 and something.
And you know, when I looked into this, I just remembered the figure of 15. Yeah. When I looked into it, I was shocked by the 200 and something. That shocked me.
Like you say, when you look at all his background as well, and how many times there were red flags that maybe some professional people should have noticed and paid attention to.
So separately, an inquiry commission chaired by High Court Judge Dame Janet Smith examined the records of 500 patients who died while in Shipman's care. And the 2,000-page report concluded that it was likely that he had murdered at least 218 of his patients, although his number was offered by Dame Janet as an estimation rather than a precise calculation, as certain cases presented insufficient evidence to allow certainty. So there is no concrete victim number. The commission further speculated that Shipman might have been addicted to killing and was critical of police investigation procedures, claiming that the lack of experience of the investigating officers resulted in missed opportunities to bring Shipman to justice earlier. He may, in fact, have taken his first victims within months of obtaining his license to practice medicine, which was 67-year-old Margaret Thompson, who died in 1971 while recovering from a stroke. but deaths prior to 1975 were never officially proven. So whatever the exact number, the sheer scale of his murder meant that Shipman was catapulted from British patient killer to the most prolific serial killer in the world. He remained at Durham prison throughout these investigations, maintaining his innocence, and was staunchly defended by his family and his wife, Primrose. He was moved to Wakefield Prison in June 2003, which made visits from his family easier. And on Tuesday, January 13, 2004, he was discovered at 6 a.m. hanging in his prison cell. He had apparently committed suicide in Wakefield Prison, where he had been incarcerated since June of 2003 after being moved. He was 57 at the time and was serving 15 concurrent life sentences for his murders, beginning in January 2000. But as we know, they started in the 70s. It is estimated that he killed, the figure lies between 250 and 260 over a 23-year period. His death opened an inquiry as to how he was able to hang himself in a cell, although suicide attempts are not particularly unusual for people facing life in prison. I'm not that concerned about his suicide in all of this. There is no evidence that he was on suicide watch at Wakefield, even though he had been on suicide watches at Durham. And a spokesperson from Wakefield told BBC News that Shipman used bed sheets to hang himself from the window bars of his cell. But she said he was showing no signs whatsoever of pre-suicidal behavior. The Guardian reported that Shipman was obnoxious and arrogant to the prison staff. Remember, he had a complex of superiority. Just before Christmas, his enhanced status was reduced to basic, and he was deprived of the television set in his cell and had to wear a prison uniform rather than his own clothes. But some of his privileges had been given back to him before he died. So, to many of his victims, his suicide is a kind of betrayal. So not only will they know why he killed their loved ones, but he escaped his punishment of spending the rest of his natural life in prison. And Danny Meller, whose mother was one of Shipman's victims, told Reuters that Shipman was a coward. And he said, "I always harbored the remote possibility that one day I could confront him and ask him why. And now that has been taken away from me." The closest that anyone came to understanding what motivated Shipman was Richard Badcock, who was a psychiatrist at Rampton Special Hospital. And after speaking at length with Shipman, Dr. Badcock said he believed that Shipman's choice of career might have been influenced by his developing tendencies towards necrophilia, perhaps originally triggered by the death of his mother from cancer when he was 17. But having complete control over life and death, that can give a sense of power and omnipotent invulnerability in itself. But this is a theory by Dr. Badcock.
Can I chuck in another theory?
Yeah.
Do we think he might have killed his own mother?
So Shipman's wife and 4 children had never accepted that he was guilty, and Primrose was very devoted to her husband. He was, however, described as a real bully at home, which is no surprise because his superiority complex. And although he used a bedsheet, Okay, the Inquiry Commission had earlier, there are new revelations to start here. There are new revelations that the Inquiry Commission had earlier published reports in 2002 stating that Shipman had begun his killing career after he had joined a general practice in Todmorden in 1974, but then investigators decided to examine 137 patient deaths prior to that time for suspicious circumstances. A student nurse in Pontefract General Hospital, West Yorkshire, where Shipman had worked as a junior house officer, between leaving medical school and becoming a doctor, and where he received his doctor's registration in 1971, the student nurse, Whitehead, had reflected back over her 3 months there and recalled the high death rate, so she contacted the commission to voice her concerns. The realization, she was quoted as saying, was like hitting a brick wall at 60 miles an hour. She believed her colleague, who had used prescription drugs inappropriately, had been killing patients even then, because Shipman had his own addiction to drugs, and he was prescribing them for himself as well. And he did actually attend rehab in the midst of all of this in the early part of his career. So the commission, which was chaired by Dame Janet Smith, re-examined 137 patient deaths, 133 for which Shipman had signed a death certificate or cremation order, and 4 more around whom witnesses had indicated he was present. So Dame Janet found Shipman present in at least 1/3 of the cases he had certified, compared to an average of 1.6% for other doctors. So 1.6% of doctors were present at patient deaths. He was there for 1/3.
That's crazy.
33.3%, isn't it? So that raised red flags, as did the fact that an unusually high percentage of deaths had occurred between 6 p.m. and midnight. It was initially believed that Shipman, who, as a GP, made house calls to the elderly, mostly women, had taken advantage of the easy pickings among such patients. But that idea has proven to be erroneous. While he certainly engaged in that behavior, it seemed that he preyed on other types of patients as well. The latest report confirmed that Shipman appeared to have killed at least 15 patients prior to 75. And Dame Janet was suspicious of about at least 24 deaths, and also indicates that she said that while there will never be definitive evidence in many cases, the actual figure, as we mentioned, could be as high as 284. That's the highest figure that I've come across. The public was angry that he'd been allowed to practice for so long without anyone noticing what he was doing. And since healthcare serial killers, this is an actual term, HCSK, healthcare serial killers, appear to have increased worldwide over the past 2 decades. We should probably look into that. People are demanding to know why vigilance has been so low and institutions have not been held accountable for hospital-based murders by doctors. And given these new findings, it was clear that new procedures had to be put in place, especially in light of yet another report that demanded investigation. So although he never confessed, and in fact denied all the allegations, John Harkin, an inmate at Preston Prison, where Shipman temporarily was, said the doctor confessed to killing as many as 508 patients. Yeah. Who knows if that's true? Who knows if that's true that, his fellow inmate, his fellow inmate's assertion. We don't know that that's true, but that's what he alleged. So upon investigation, there proved to be no basis for that claim's accuracy, but, worth noting.
Who knows?
We'll
never know.
Yeah. A psychiatrist also described Shipman as a classic necrophiliac. Now, remember Dr. Badcock, when he mentioned necrophilia, I thought, that's the first time I've come across that with this case, although there was no evidence that he had erotic attraction to corpses. So others believe that his motive was to
what other necrophiliac attraction is there to a corpse? I thought it was erotic.
Yeah. So the psychiatrist described Shipman as a classic necrophiliac, although there's no evidence that he had erotic attraction. There's no evidence for that. So others believe that his motive was to exercise control, which I always want to know what it comes down to. And I always think there's got to be a link with his mother having cancer, him being young, that potentially traumatizing him watching his mother be injected with diamorphine by the doctor, that his murders parallel that so much. It's almost like he's reenacting it. There's got to be a link, So in January 2001, Chris Gregg, a senior West Yorkshire police detective, was selected to lead an investigation into 22 of the Yorkshire deaths. And the Shipman inquiry in 2002 concluded that he had killed 218 of his patients between 75 and 98, during which time he practiced in Todmorden and Hyde. And Dame Janet Smith admitted that many more deaths of a suspicious nature could not be definitively ascribed to him. And in her 5th and final report, Smith reported that she believed that Shipman had killed 3 patients, and she had serious suspicions of 4 further deaths, including that of a 4-year-old girl during the early stage of his medical career in Pontefract General Infirmary. So, not necessarily only elderly. So in total, 459 people died while under his care between 1971 and 98, but it's uncertain how many of those were murder victims, as he was often the only doctor to certify a death. The GMC charged 6 doctors who signed cremation forms for Shipman's victims with misconduct, claiming they should have noticed the pattern between Shipman's home visit and his home visits and the patient deaths. All these doctors were found not guilty, though, and in October 2005, a similar hearing was held against 2 doctors who worked at Tameside General Hospital in 1994 who failed to detect that Shipman had deliberately administered a grossly excessive dose of morphine. The Shipman inquiry recommended changes to the structure of the GMC, and it came to light also in 2005 that Shipman may have stolen jewelry from his victims. In 1998, police seized over 10,000 pounds worth of jewelry they found in his garage, which is, you know, suspicious in itself, because who keeps jewelry in the garage?
Yeah,
you
number
don't.
one.
You keep it in a safe place in your house, you know, not your garage, which is the place in your house that's most likely to get broken into. So in 2005, when Primrose asked for its return, the jewelry, police wrote to the families of Shipman's victims asking them to identify the jewelry. And unidentified items were handed to the Assets Recovery Agency in May, and the investigation ended in August. Authorities returned 66 pieces to Primrose and auctioned 33 pieces that were confirmed not to be hers. And the proceeds of the auction went to Tameside's victim support. The only piece returned to a murdered patient's family was a platinum diamond ring, for which the family provided a photograph as proof of ownership. And I find that interesting as well, that he stole the jewelry but didn't sell it. So were they like
Trophies?
Yeah.
Or was he planning on selling them later on down the line, but just thinking I have to wait a while till the dust settles?
Was that theory of him forging the will to move abroad and then sell the jewelry part of an escape plan, you know? So a memorial garden to Shipman's victims called the Garden of Tranquility opened in Hyde Park, in Hyde, not London, in 2005. And as of early 2009, families of over 200 of the victims of Shipman were still seeking compensation for the loss of their relatives. And letters Shipman wrote in prison to friends were sold at auction, but following complaints from victims' relatives in the media, the sale was withdrawn. So the Shipman case and a series of recommendations in the Shipman Inquiry Report led to changes in standard medical procedures in the UK. This is now called the Shipman effect. Many doctors reported changes in their dispensing practices, and a reluctance to risk overprescribing pain medication may have led to underprescribing. Interesting.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
That's horrifying too.
Yeah. So death certification practices were altered as well. And perhaps the largest change was the movement from single doctor general practices to multiple doctor general practices. This was not a direct recommendation, but rather because the report stated that there was not enough safeguarding and monitoring of doctors' decisions. The forms needed for a cremation in England and Wales have had their questions altered as a direct result of the Shipman case. For example, the person organizing the funeral must answer, do you know or suspect that the death of the person who has died was violent or unnatural? And also, do you consider that there should be any further examination of the remains of the person who has died? Shipman's motive remains elusive. There are only theories, because obviously he never admitted and he never confessed, and he also committed suicide. Financial or sexual incentives were ruled out. I don't know how they ruled out financial incentives because he forged a will, so I don't know how. Some argue it was a God complex where he enjoyed the power over life and death. I believe so.
I feel like he was doing for them what he felt like he couldn't do for his mum, which was relieve them of their suffering.
But
Obviously,
they were in good health. They were in good health.
I know. And it's weird because there must have been other elderly people in his practice that were in poorer health.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. I'm not saying he should have gone for them. I just,
I can almost believe that he felt he was putting people out of suffering if they were terminally ill, but the people that he was murdering were not. They were in good health. That's what makes me think it's a God complex. As you said, others believed he viewed himself as a merciful figure, easing the suffering of people. But yeah, most of his patients were not terminally ill or in pain. So, this case led to a big loss of trust in the medical community. And, in light of his crimes, there were extensive reforms, as we talked about, in the UK's medical and legal systems, stricter monitoring of doctors, and alterations to death certification processes, and tighter controls over the access and use of prescribed medicine. But yeah, it is a reminder of the potential consequences of unchecked power and trust, even in professions that are dedicated to health and healing and care. So his actions have left, a big scar on, the British medical profession, as well as the families of his victims. So yeah, I wanted to look into it because although I hate everything that has elderly people as victims, you just want to know more. How a doctor got away with this. We're not talking about even 50 years ago. We're talking about, okay, may have started 50 years ago, but this happened until just over 20 years ago, So it feels recent. It feels recent, and I'm glad that there have been, overhauls, but it's
scary.
It's uneasy. It makes you uneasy and makes you want to question
and
a lot
that
of
lack
things.
of trust.
Yeah,
Lack of trust in the healthcare system. It's not because people think, oh, any doctor could be a serial killer. Most people aren't that alarmist. It's just the fact that if someone can go and kill that many people unnoticed, what else are doctors able to do, or what kind of neglect or oversight is then also?
Well, that's the thing. Everyone has a story. Everyone has a story about oversight or neglect or wrong choices, by medical. Everyone has a story like that.
And if they can get away with that, if someone can get away with serial killing, then what else is falling through the nets or being ignored or being
and that's
unnoticed?
The thing. That's why I wanted to look into this, because it just reminds you have to question things. You have to question things.
So if you don't feel like something's right, just fucking try to get a second opinion, whatever, because you can't just assume that someone in a position of authority and supposed care of the community is going to be is not going to be negligent or worse. Sadly. Hate it.
Yeah, I hate it too, but it did spark an interest. It did spark. I had to, when you have to know, I had to know how he got away with it for so long. But the good news is
we've got People's Pulse.
Yes.
People's Pulse. Wait, this is where we put the theme tune. People's Pulse. What's the question today?
Okay, so the question today is, what is your best/worst drunken story? Okay, and I say best/worst. Do you know, I was trying to think of, don't I have to start with mine? Because
I could tell you. No, I'll tell you my favorite drunken moment. Okay, because yours.
Because I don't think that I have any like funny drunk stories or embarrassing ones, because I think I'm pretty I'm pretty much teetotal these days, and that's only through lack of opportunity, not through not enjoying alcohol. But I think even back in the day when I was drinking regularly, there's like only...
You are forgetting your birthday in Chiswick, where you decided you were going to be running for either mayor of Chiswick or queen of the world. I'm not entirely sure.
Yeah, of course I forgot, because I don't remember it. I remember from seeing the photos. It looked like a lot of fun.
It was a lot of fun. You were walking home. I think you had stolen a glass of your drink. You're still walking home across the green, across Turnham Green, saying that when you won your position as, like I said, queen of the world or queen of Chiswick, I'm not entirely sure. You were I think it was the grass will be greener. The sky will be bluer.
Oh God.
And I still think about that and smile.
Oh God. Can we just say that this was like, I think this was my early 20s.
Yeah. And it was your birthday. It was your birthday.
Yeah.
So I was also struggling.
Campaign.
Your campaign.
My mayor campaign.
Your election campaign. I was struggling as well, because I do a lot of fucking stupid shit, but it's not necessarily because I'm drunk. It's because
I think stupid. You're almost at your finest when you've had a drink.
I'm better.
Can I just say that I don't think we are sloppy drunks. We're not sloppy. I do think that we know and we always have known the cutoff point where like drunk becomes messy and out of control.
Dangerous.
Yeah. We've always kind of stopped at that line when you're still at worst obnoxious. At worst.
I will. Do you know what? I'm going to tell my favorite drunk story, because
Yes.
Drunk D, what she does a lot is online shopping.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
But she's so cute. She writes little gift notes for sober or hungover D. And one time, Drunk D bought hungover D a present. I can't remember where from, but it was a T-shirt. I'll have to find it. Post
Was this
pictures.
the pizza with the
A T-shirt of a unicorn, of a horse with just a unicorn corn on. Like it's not a real unicorn, with a cat with sunglasses eating a pizza or flying a pizza kite with all these like surreal psychedelic colors.
I remember there was a lot of random elements all on one T-shirt.
Yeah. So Drunk D bought that for Sober D once.
Yeah.
And a little gift card saying, "Enjoy it. Hope you're feeling okay."
A cat riding a unicorn eating pizza. That's what it was. What the fuck was the person designing that T-shirt? What were they taking to construe that masterpiece?
Yeah, so that's my funniest drunk story, and that it still makes me laugh.
I would say though, you really are at your finest. Like after a drink, you're witty, you're funny, you're smart, you're eloquent. You know.
Thanks. I think so. That's why I drink so much and so little and often. Little and often is the key.
But yeah, but what I would say is I have to say, like, we're both pretty good at like, you stop when you know you fucking should.
Do you know what? I feel like both of us have spent a lot of time being the carers in the drunk situation. So
I mean, like, I've only had, like, really, I can only count maybe 2 or 3 times in my whole life. And I think the last time was probably when I was 20, when I was blackout drunk. And
I just remembered a time.
Me or you?
Me.
Oh, tell me. It's
I
usually accidental though, isn't it? It's usually a point where you're like, shit, the evening stopped somewhere. I was okay, and then suddenly I wasn't, and I don't remember the rest. But definitely roofies weren't involved. I tell you what, me and you, we're always careful with our drinks. You take
careful with our drinks. These are off our own stupidity. And this is another story involving the barley mow, which featured in the last episode. It's now called the Lamb in Chiswick, and it's much classier than when we went.
Gentrified.
I was absolutely fucking wasted. My last day of work at the Science Museum. And I literally don't know what happened. Don't know how I got home. None of it. But I went to post a letter a few days later at the post office, which is next to the Barley Mow pub. And they had a bunch of my possessions, and they knew that they were mine because there was also Polaroid pictures of me and a bunch of people that I was out with, most of whom I don't recognize. So because of they found a bunch of the contents of my handbag, and I think I must have fallen down outside the post office and just had a whole spill. They had like my eyeliner. They had these Polaroid pictures. So they must have all looked at these pictures and been like, "What fucking idiot!" And then I've come in a couple of days, like a couple of days later, they're like, "It's her from the photos. Give her eyeliner back."
Oh my god! So yeah. So we've had a few.
Tell us the responses.
Well, we've got Isla again. So Isla, worst drink moment. This is the first time I'm reading this, by the way. So this is Isla verbatim. Worst drink moment is with Dee at Siobhan's birthday, where Siobhan had to carry me down the stairs, me as Isla. Do you remember? Obviously you remember. I then puked in a taxi, and the taxi driver wouldn't let me out the car until I paid £100. But I had no money on me. I think Dee may have been talking to him on my phone. I mean, the puke was mostly water, as I got most of it out the window and the door. But then she has another one. Oh no, I have another one. I was 18 at a party at a friend's house. I got so wasted while her folks were out. They had one toilet, and there were like 20 of us in the house. I had the shits and pukes. So locked myself in the loo and went to sleep for hours and wouldn't let anyone in. When I woke up, folks were lined up outside the loo to get in. No one talked to me for days.
That's so I love. Oh my god.
I
had to pay that 100 quid for cleaning the taxi because the guy basically said, "I'm holding her hostage until someone pays me £100."
Oh fuck.
Yeah. Anyway.
Hostage. Fuck. I mean, I do have a story. It's not even funny though. It's kind of just if the question is, do you have any puking while drunk stories? My list is long, but they're not that funny. Do you know what I mean? Like I did puke all over projectile the toilet cubicle at O'Neill's in Shepherd's Bush after I think 6 double whiskey and lemonade. What the fuck was I drinking?
The O'Neill's at Shepherd's Bush. Do you mean the Belushi's?
No, O'Neill's. It's right next to the Empire, overlooking the green.
Oh yeah, of course. Yes,
yeah.
yes.
So, I mean, I got a lot of puking stories, but they're not that funny. They're not. I mean, who hasn't?
Oh,
you know.
I did again walking home from the Barley Mow once. I was chatting to my friend, and I did walk straight into the parking meter and busted my lip.
Oh, that's sad though.
I mean, it was kind of funny. It was kind of funny.
Hold on.
What else we got?
Okay, hold on. Let me just check. Okay, let me just check. Okay, so Karen. Oh my God, Karen. Okay, cool. So this is Karen, UK Karen, who's up north. She said Midlands, but I say up north because we're down in London. Okay, so she got picked up by the police for her own safety. So I was like, I need to know more. So she said, I got really drunk on a hen night when I was about 21. I took it upon myself to walk back to my then boyfriend's house at 2 a.m. through a pretty rough area of Coventry. The police spotted me toddling along and stopped me, popped me in the car and tried to find out where I lived. Turns out I couldn't remember where I lived, but I could remember my phone number. My mom had been on the same night out, so was pretty tipsy too, and recommended they ring my boyfriend to pick me up. He was mad and I was mortified to have to pick me up from the police station. He then went on to join the police a few years later. So, Karen, you always provide us with some good gold.
Thank you so much,
Let
Karen.
me just check. Are there any last minute entries? Let me just see. Did that one. That is it for the People's Pulse.
The People's Pulse. The People's Pulse. The People's Pulse. I'm putting the music on under that. Did you get that? Yeah. Okay, cool. We love the People's Pulse.
I know. If we could just do the People's Pulse, I'd be fucking thrilled.
Remember, we want any recommendations, any suggestions for questions for the People's Pulse. Keep an eye on the stories. Answer our questions. We want your fucking answers. We see you looking at our stories. Don't look at it without giving us an answer.
It's because people know that we name
If you missed the story. Oh, okay.
Look, be named.
I'll tell you what, if you want your answer to be anonymous, you're more than welcome to say that, and we promise we will honor that.
Yes.
But give us your fucking stories. Also, can you do us a favor and like, follow, subscribe, do the things, whatever?
Oh, it's been a couple of weeks since we've had a review. I love the Apple Podcast reviews.
Please, we're begging you. We are literally attention whores at this point.
Yep.
That guy was right. We are attention seeking. And what? So do that if you can, if you like us, if you're going to give us a good review. If it's going to be a not so good review, then just don't bother. Don't waste your time with it. It's fine. Do something else. But yeah, we love you guys.
Love you.
Love you. Can't wait until next week when we will have more nightmares. Bye.
Bye.